listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello everyone, you are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin, and I am a big fat liar. In the last episode, I said that this one would be part 2 of the Dark Side of Disney series, but then something really unexpected happened. The probable cause affidavit for Richard Allen, the accused Delphi murders killer, was made public. I had absolutely no idea that that was coming. And because that's a case that I have been religiously following for more than 5 years now, that absolutely takes priority. It's a huge deal. So we're going to cover it in this episode and go over what it means for the case as a whole. Does it provide any additional information? How does it alter the timeline, if at all? But before we get into that, let's just get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. Again, you're listening to We Saw the Devil. I'm your host, Robin. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com. From there, you can find us across all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so forth. Find our Patreon if you want to financially back the show. And as always, if you're liking the content, digging it, please take 5 seconds out of your day to leave a 5-star review on whatever platform on which you are currently listening. That would mean the absolute world to not just me, but any other true crime podcast that you listen to. If you like the content, please take time out of your day to show your support. It doesn't, necessarily have to be financially. Even just leaving a review is so incredibly helpful. If you are somehow unfamiliar with the Delphi murders, I did do an overview episode, last month, so please feel free to check that out. Unless you've really been following from the beginning, it's kind of hard to articulate just how big of a deal this breakthrough is. The murders of Abby and Libby went unsolved for 5 years. And since I still have so many followers from the Vallow case, I believe, just guys, imagine that case being unsolved for 5 years. But, all the theories, the conspiracies, the outside players, all the people who were possibly connected, that was all still good and alive. But it just went unsolved and appeared dead. That's how the Delphi murders case has been. There's been a couple podcasts on it, and a couple random players, which I discussed in that previous episode as well. But this is truly a huge ordeal that police have arrested Richard Allen and seem to be pretty confident that they have their guy. When he was arrested back in October, the probable cause affidavit was sealed, meaning it was not released to the public. We had no idea why he was arrested or what kind of evidence the police had. Did someone turn him in? Did they find a murder weapon? Just how was he connected? The arrest was announced, and then we just kind of waited. Not a lot transpired. Of course, the internet did its job, and people really dug into who he was, where he worked, his whole life. That's kind of the nature of the internet these days, especially the true crime community. And so that's kind of what we've been reading. And I've done a couple episodes on who Richard Allen is, and that's all we've had. On November 22nd, there was a hearing where the judge heard arguments as to whether, he should leave the affidavit sealed or make it public. And quite literally, just an hour after I recorded last week's episode, it was made public. And don't forget, before I get into it, do not forget that the police and that arrest affidavit, they do not have to include all evidence in that probable cause affidavit. It's just a summary of the evidence and circumstances of the arrest, and it's written and given to a judge to review, who then approves or denies it. So in this case, it was obviously approved. A judge said, okay, that kind of meets the probable cause in my mind. I'll go ahead and approve it. And then Richard Allen was arrested. And again, not all evidence must be listed on this affidavit. I see a lot of people freaking out currently of, oh my God, this is all that the police have on him. There's no way this is going to stick. The trial's going to be a nightmare. The full story is going to come out later during discovery and in the trial. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this is an 8-page document. I'm going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to start after the initial introduction, and then I will make some commentary as we go through it. But let's get her done. Okay. Introduction, blah, blah, blah. That on February 14th, 2017, Victim 1 and Victim 2 were found deceased in the woods approximately 0.2 of a mile northeast of the Mononhai Bridge in Carroll County. Their bodies were located on the north side of Deer Creek. At the time, the Mononhai Bridge Trail was an approximately 1-mile gravel trail terminating at the Mononhai Bridge. The Mononhai Bridge is an abandoned railroad trestle approximately 1/4 of a mile long, spanning the Deer Creek and Deer Creek Valley at the southeast end of the trail. It then goes on to describe the bridge, what's around it. Like approximately 350 feet west of the Freedom Bridge was a former railroad overpass. It really describes the area and that little Mononhai Trail and the bridge. Continuing on. Through interviews, reviews of electronic records, and review of video at the Hoosier Harvestor, investigators believe Victim 1 and Victim 2 were dropped off across from the Mears farm at 1:49 p.m. on February 13th. And then by redacted. The Mears farm is located on the north side of County 300 North near an entrance to the trails. A video from Victim number 2's phone shows that at 2:13 p.m., Victim 1 and Victim 2 encountered a male subject on the southeast portion of the Mononhai Bridge. The male ordered the guys down the hill. No witnesses saw them after this time. No outgoing communications were found on Victim 2's phone after this time. Their bodies were then discovered on February 14th, 2017. The video recovered from Victim 2's phone shows Victim 1 walking southeast on the Mononhai Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. As the male subject approaches Victim 1 and Victim 2, one of the victims mentions gun. Near the end of the video, a male is seen and heard telling the girls, "Guys, down the hill." The girls then begin to proceed down the hill and the video ends. A still photograph taken from the video and the "Guys Down the Hill" audio was subsequently released to the public to assist investigators in identifying the male. Victim 1 and Victim 2's deaths were ruled as homicides. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek belonging to Victim 1 and Victim 2 south of where their bodies were located. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from Victim 2's body between Victim 1 and Victim 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. Interviews were conducted with 3 juveniles. They advised that they were on the Mononhai Bridge Trail on February 13th, 2017. They advised that they were walking on the trail toward Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge toward the Mononhai Bridge. They described the male as kind of creepy and advised that he was wearing blue jeans and really light blue jacket and his hair maybe a little gray, some brown, and he didn't really show his face. She advised the jacket was a duck canvas type jacket. Advised she said hi to the male, but he just glared at them. She recalled him being in all black and had something covering his mouth. She described him as not very tall with a bigger build. She said that he was not bigger than 5'10" and advised that he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots. She stated that he had his hands in his pocket. Another witness there advised that she had also seen him. She took several photos from the Freedom Bridge and as well as the trail. And she described the man that she encountered as wearing blue or black windbreaker jacket. She advised the jacket had a collar and that he had his hood up from underneath the clothing, say a hoodie up underneath his jacket and put up over his head. She said that he was wearing baggy jeans and that he was taller than her. She advised her head came up to roughly his shoulder. She apparently said hi to him and then he said nothing back. She stated that he was walking with a purpose, like he knew where he was going. She stated he had his hands in his pockets and kept his head down. She did admit that she did not get a good look at his face, but believed him to be a white male. And the 2 girls advised, after encountering the male, that they continued their walk across the Freedom Bridge and the old railroad bridge over Old State Route 25. There was another woman who was there as well. She was there to walk. And what's really interesting about this is that police have used the Hoosier Harvestor to kind of verify a lot of witness stories, because the store is located in a place, if you've seen the videos and whatnot, where if you're going to the trailhead, you're probably going to pass that harvest store, the Hoosier Harvest Store. And so they were able to verify a lot of these. Well, I got to the trail at this time by reconciling it against those videos. So this affidavit also includes a statement from the woman who we know was walking on the bridge that day. She actually encountered Richard Allen on that bridge. And so she said that she saw 4 juvenile females walking the bridge as she was driving underneath it on her way to park. She said that there were no other cars parked across from the Mears farm when she parked there. And so she was walking. She entered the trailhead. She started walking. She made it to the bridge. And she observed a male matching the one from victim 2's video. The man that everyone knows now as Bridge Guy. She said that the male that she saw was a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform of the Mononhai Bridge, approximately 50 feet away from her. She said that at that point, she turned around and then continued her walk back. She advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from Mears Farm, where she had parked, she passed 2 girls walking towards the Mononhai Bridge. And she advised that she believed that the girls were, in fact, victim 1 and victim 2, Abby and Libby. And then video again, police have made sure to include this, which is great. The Hoosier Harvest Store shows at 1:49 p.m. a white car matching that woman's vehicle traveling away from the entrance across from Mears Farm. She apparently finished her walk. She saw no other adults and did not see that man again. She did state, however, that when she was leaving, she saw a vehicle parked in an odd manner at the old CPS, the old Child Protective Services building. And it was not really odd for people to park there, but she said that she noticed it was odd because of the way that it was parked. It was parked near the back of the building. It was backed in, and it appeared as though the person did not want their license plate noticed or read. Multiple people actually saw the vehicle parked at the CPS building, and we now know that it's been, people have claimed that it was a PT Cruiser, that it was a smart car, that it was a small SUV. What we now know is that it matched Richard Allen's Ford Focus that he actually drove. This arrest affidavit includes witnesses, basically from people who were on the trail that day, on the bridge that day, like the woman who was walking, as well as video from the Hoosier Harvest Store, reconciling and verifying, that these people were in fact there, their cars were caught on camera, and their timeline matches up. So showing the truth and validity of their statements. There was another witness, and this is probably the most telling. There was another witness, again, name redacted, and she was traveling east on 300 North on the 13th, shortly after what we now know in the timeline would be after the murders. And she observed a male subject walking west on the north side of 300 North, away from the Mononhai Bridge. She advised that the male subject was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. She further stated that it appeared that he had gotten into a fight. Investigators were able to determine from watching the video from, again, the Hoosier Harvest Store, that she had been traveling on 300 North at approximately 3:57 p.m. Again, this places the suspect, who we now know as Richard Allen, walking along CR 300 North approximately 3:57 p.m. In what looks like to be muddied and bloodied clothing. There were other people on the trail that day after 2:13 p.m. None of them actually saw Richard Allen or the suspect. Also, none of them saw Libby or Abby on the trail. So Richard Allen, Libby, and Abby have not been seen at this point forward. On record, past 2:13 p.m. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who had interviewed Richard Allen back in 2017. Don't forget, Richard Allen proactively went to the police when the girls were marked as missing. The narrative stated, quote, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30. He parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated that there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, however, did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an MEI, but did have the following and gave the MEID and other information. The note said potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of Freedom Bridge? Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the former CPS building, as there was not a Farm Bureau building in that area, nor had there been. Investigators believe the females he saw included the 2 girls originally that he saw, due to the time frame that they were leaving the trail, the times he reported getting to the trail, and the descriptions the 3 females gave. Investigators discovered that Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017, a 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 gray Ford 500. Investigators observed a vehicle that resembled Allen's 2016 Ford Focus, again via the Hoosier Harvest Store video, at 1:27 p.m. traveling westbound on CR 300 North in front of Hoosier Harvest Store, which coincided with his statement that he arrived around 1:30 p.m. at the trails. Investigators note witnesses first described the vehicle parked at the former CPS building as a PT Cruiser, small SUV, or smart car. Because all of those descriptions are similar in nature, investigators believe that it could match a 2016 Ford Focus. On October 13th, 2022, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators. He advised he was on the trails on February 13th, 2017. He stated he saw juvenile girls on the trails east of Freedom Bridge and that he went onto the Mononhai Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out onto the Mononhai Bridge to watch the fish. Later in his statement, he said that he walked out on the first platform of the bridge. He stated that he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He stated that he parked his car on the side of an old building. He told investigators that he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. He advised that he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. He told investigators that he owns firearms and they are at his home. Richard M. Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, also spoke to investigators. She confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at the residence. She also stated that Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket, which star that statement, guys, because I'm going to come back to that one. On October 13th, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence at 1967 North Whiteman Drive, Delphi, Carroll County, Indiana. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig Sauer Model P226, 40 caliber pistol with serial number U625627. Between October 14th and October 19th, 2022, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscopic comparison, and nibbin. The laboratory determined that the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim number 2's bodies had been cycled through Richard N. Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226. The laboratory remarked, "An identification opinion is reached when the evidence exhibits an agreement of class characteristics and a sufficient agreement of individual marks. Sufficient agreement is related to the significant duplication of random, striated, and pressed marks as evidenced by the correspondence of a pattern of combination of patterns of surface contours. The interpretation of identification is subject to nature and based on relevant scientific research and the reporting examiner's training and experience." Investigators then ran the firearm and found that the firearm was purchased by Richard Allen in 2001. Richard Allen voluntarily came to the Indiana State Police Post on October 26, 2022. He spoke with investigators and stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the Sig Sauer Model P226 firearm. When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of Victim 1 and Victim 2. He again admitted that he was on the trail, but denied knowing Victim 1 or Victim 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. It then goes on to talk about how the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, how the detective has been part of the investigation since it started. They've reviewed all of the evidence, and they believe the evidence gathered shows that Richard M. Allen is the male subject seen on video from Victim 2's phone who forced the victims down the hill. And further, taken by Richard M. Allen and forced down the hill to the location where they were murdered. It then goes through and lists the previous witness statements and how they believe that the man that they saw on the bridge and the blue Carhartt, whether it's on the trail itself or walking on the side of CR 300, they believe that same male was Richard Allen. The same thing with the 2016 Ford Focus and so forth. I won't go ahead and relive all of those particular witness statements. Now, this may not seem like a lot to a lot of people. I've seen a lot of posts online, different forums of people being like, if this is all the prosecution has, this man is going to walk free. Again, I invite you to remember that this is not likely all of the evidence that they have. And B, this evidence is actually more important than you might think. The affidavit states that, quote, there was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet from victim 2's body between victim 1 and victim 2's. Also, and mentions that it had extraction marks on it. Now, I know a lot of people following this case aren't familiar with guns, so here's how that possibly went down. Let's say that Richard Allen planned to do something, or a lot of gun owners in general. If they are carrying a pistol, they will make sure that the chamber has a bullet in it, right? So he likely loaded the bullets into the magazine. He would have had to have held on to the magazine in one hand and taken, a handful of bullets in the other and put them into the magazine. He would then slide the bullet down, push it down, and basically there's a spring mechanism that keeps all of them in a line inside of the magazine, ready to be fed into the chamber. So his fingerprint, specifically likely thumbprint, would have been, at least a partial, would have been all over that bullet. So imagine someone sitting there with kind of like a cup, and not a cup, but you guys know what I mean, like a little magazine. You know what a ammo magazine looks like, and you have a handful of bullets in one hand, and you're feeding it into that magazine. So his thumbprint would have been all over that. Keep in mind too that investigators did have some DNA, and I believe previously they stated that they did have a fingerprint as well. And let's say that Richard Allen filled up the magazine with bullets and then puts it into the gun. The gun is now whole again, but it isn't ready to be fired. There's that classic sliding mechanism on the top of the Sig Sauer, that bar on top, and it moves the bullet from the magazine and places it into the chamber where the gun will then be ready to, fire the bullet. Now, I think we can all agree that Richard Allen likely got his gun ready to go before he went to the Monon High Bridge, right? Like, I highly doubt this was just an unplanned, random thing. My guess is that this was planned, and he filled his gun and he was walking on the bridge, right? He had his gun in his pocket. The girls saw that he had a gun. The girls are at the bridge. Richard Allen's walking up to them. This is on video. He pulls out the gun and says, "Down the hill." Don't forget, again, that they said that there was a gun. They then moved to the final destination, down the hill, across the creek, and up that little embankment. He likely ordered them to remove their clothes on the way, as their clothes were found south in the creek. If he racked the gun to show them that he meant business, it would have ejected the bullet that was already preloaded into the chamber to make way for the new one. The unspent one would have then fallen onto the ground. So, my best guess is that he came prepared. He racked the gun. He loaded it, say like at home, in his car, wherever. There was a bullet in the chamber. When he gets to wherever he's going, around most likely the final destination of where the girls were found, for whatever reason, he, either in a show of force or, I don't know, basically showing them that he means business. He maybe cocked the gun again. That would have taken that bullet and ejected it from the gun. Now, this was cold. This was February in Indiana. It was cold outside. It was relatively cold outside, seasonally cold. So considering where the girls were found with all of the brush and whatnot, it would have been really, really hard if Richard Allen did in fact realize what had happened and that he lost a bullet. It would have been really, really hard for him to find that based on the timeline. It could have easily have gotten lost in brush or bush. As that bullet was ejected, it rattled around in the chamber at a very high speed, hitting the internal lines and curvature of that pistol. So every single gun is unique, even if it's the exact same model. You and I could have a handgun of the exact same model, but each one of our guns leaves an easily identifiable mark on the bullets because everything's a little bit different. So let's say you and I go out and shoot a watermelon and nobody knows which gun, which one of us hit it. A forensics team could literally examine the bullet, examine our guns, and say it came out of Robin's gun. based on the marks, they can positively ID it to a certain gun. Even if it's out of, say, 10 of the exact same models, every gun has very, very small minor imperfections or minor curvature changes that make it unique. So Richard Allen did whatever he did with the two girls, but at some point he racked the gun and a bullet was ejected, and it was found between their bodies. Per law enforcement. Due to timing, whatever, he left the scene without finding it. Maybe he searched for it and couldn't find it. Maybe he was just a little slow. Maybe he didn't have time, whatever. It's also possible that the gun jammed and he had to clear the chamber manually. I find that much less likely. The arrest affidavit also states that on October 13th, police executed a search warrant at Richard Allen's home, and they discovered that Sig Sauer P226 .40 caliber pistol. So officially, that is the reason why Richard Allen has been arrested. They also have stated that they have found, his wife stated that he still has that same Carhartt jacket. It has been 5 years, but we don't know what kind of evidence. Don't forget, the police have also said previously that that the killer took souvenirs. So we don't know what kind of souvenirs that he might have taken. Also, I see a lot of people speculating regarding that bullet, that he left the bullet there as kind of a statement to police, because police have said that the crime scene appeared staged. I find that hard to believe unless he, shot something, took the bullet, and then placed it there himself. I just can't imagine that this man would be that big of a numbskull. And guys, if you think about it and just kind of step back and view everything that happened here, this man went to police the day the girls were reported missing. Imagine, for whatever reason, if he wanted to kind of stay off police radar, if he wanted to go ahead and get himself kind of wedged into the investigation, he went and he was like, yeah, I was there. I saw nothing. I didn't see anything, though. He was friendly. He was part of the community. He worked at CVS. And don't forget that he worked at CVS as a pharmacy technician and sometimes photo and printed off funeral pictures for one of the girls' families. And was like, hey, I'll give them to you free of charge. This man, although he wasn't like a cornerstone of the community, a lot of people would likely recognize him. And it's mind-boggling to me that here's a man that went to police. This is a heinous crime. Police themselves have described this crime scene as a bloodbath. Now, the arrest affidavit does not give us the way that the girls died, but it was apparently very, very, very gruesome, grisly, and bloody. No one heard shots that day, so a lot of people are speculating it was likely done with a knife of some kind. This man was there that day. The girls were brutally murdered. He comes later that afternoon. They're missing at this point. It's like, hey, yeah, I was there, totally. They interviewed him. I believe they interviewed him one additional time before 2022, and nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. Police did not investigate his alibi. They didn't investigate anything at all. And before, I've been so like, do not blame his wife. Do not blame his wife. Do not question his wife. It doesn't, we don't want to think, that of our loved ones, similar to Anne Rule and Ted Bundy, initially, there's no way that he could have done that. There's no way. And then it finally became, the evidence became a little too much to bear. At this point, with knowing everything that we now know, we have the video, we have the voice, and that woman literally, and it says in the arrest affidavit that she says, yeah, he still has that jacket. How he walks, what he looks like, that he probably has that entire outfit. How the fuck did you not know that he did it? How? Like, even 2 weeks ago, I was like, there's no way, it's totally possible that she didn't suspect him, that she didn't think that her Richard could have done that. And now, knowing everything that we know, including the fact that he still has that, he admitted that he was there, the voice was available, the gate, the video, everything that we now know. What in the world? Not only do we have a police force that's completely inept, how did his wife not know? I can promise you that any person, if I were in that particular predicament, and I hate doing this. I hate saying, well, if it were me, it would have been me. No, it would have been pretty freaking apparent. His ass would have been in prison, or at least the police would have been investigating him like years prior. I don't understand. I really do not understand at all. I can't. A lot of ineptitude here. I don't know if it was a stroke of luck. Again, it's kind of hard with the arrest affidavit and not having the full updated information, like everything that we now know. But to our understanding so far, the police basically were just kind of looking back at the case and decided to just randomly go down this lead. True or false, I'm not sure. Police have been known to be very mealy-mouthed or say one thing while they're investigating. This has been an active, and the police have still stated that this is still an ongoing active investigation. People are still not convinced, for whatever reason, that Keegan Kline is not involved. And for the life of me, guys, I can't fathom, like, with everything that we know in the true crime community and everything that I've said and stated, and if you ask any of your female friends, predators are absolutely everywhere, especially when it comes to female children, little girls. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that Keegan Kline was just, unfortunately, one of the predators in the girls' orbit. I do not believe that he is involved, although it is really curious timing, that is for sure. A lot of people are saying that there was some sort of like pedophile ring, related to Keegan Kline and all of that. I personally do not believe that is true. I feel like a lot of people don't want to state that, Occam's razor type of thing. They want to fantasticize, a pedophile ring of, a lot of people in Delphi who are connected to child porn and this, that, and the other is a much better story than, sadly, these girls were preyed upon by two different people simultaneously in different ways. But I just cannot get over just how ridiculous Richard Allen apparently had to have been after the murder. I feel like maybe he thought that he was scot-free after maybe the video had been released, the evidence and from the cell phone footage of him walking and the audio of saying down the hill. Don't forget that there have been multiple witnesses. You can find news articles that have stated that he was relatively mute as a man. Like, he would go to a restaurant, his wife would order for them. He barely spoke other than like, yeah, no, even at his job. But he inserted himself initially. And then after, what does he do? The girls' cell phones were still left on the scene. He didn't take them. There was a bullet left behind, which maybe he knew about, maybe he didn't. He walks past witnesses on the road covered in blood head to toe on his jeans and his jacket. He likely kept his clothing, if we're relying on what his wife has said, that he still has that Carhartt, that blue Carhartt like windbreaker. He kept the weapon that he used, the gun that he took to the scene. I mean, he even went to and above all, he went to law enforcement and was like, I was there during the time of the crime. And his entire plan after he killed these two girls, if this was premeditated, was to walk over half a mile, I think it's somewhere like 3/4 of a mile, along a road that other cars are traveling on while he's covered in blood from a quote, bloodbath attack back to his vehicle, which is shadily parked on the side of an old building. Like, WTF. And if you are still worried about the evidence, that this doesn't seem to be a lot, do not forget that police have stated that they do have a partial fingerprint and they did recover DNA. Now, DNA can be absolutely anything. It can be, on a cup, as we've seen in previous episodes. It can be a cigarette butt. It can be a bullet casing. It can be absolutely anything, a piece of trash. It doesn't matter. They can have DNA on the scene. I was reading an article related to this, and someone actually found like a 10-year-old water bottle that had been sealed. It was found in a creek, submerged in water. However, the cap of the water bottle, it was very, very, very old, still had DNA on it, and they were able to convict based on that. So what I'm saying is that investigators have DNA. They now have Richard Allen. The chips will fall where they may. But it's going to be a very, very, very few interesting weeks coming up. We still do not know exactly how the girls died. If you read Ron Logan, who was a suspect briefly, total shitbag of a human being, beat all of his ex-girlfriends. He owned the property on which the girls were found. He owned a farm that backed up, and it was the property on which the girls were found. Police initially believed that he was a suspect, and they executed a search warrant on him. Well, he ended up being arrested for random other irrelevant reasons, but his arrest affidavit is the closest we have to understanding what happened to the girls, how they were positioned, where they were. That affidavit is all the information that we have currently on the state of how they were found. Don't forget, too, that when the trial comes, Indiana does not have public trials. So this will not be televised. So it's going to be kind of like the Lori Vallow case in terms of since cameras will not be allowed in the courtroom, we're going to be waiting on updates from journalists and those in attendance. But I think we're all very, very, very curious as far as how this went down. And perhaps one of the most devastating pieces, and this is my final closing thought here and recommendation. There's a video by Gray Hughes Investigates. And what he did was he made a graphical and animated representation of the probable cause affidavit. He includes all of the witnesses, the two girls, Libby and Abby, Richard Allen, and their dots on a map. And it literally shows the timeline animated on how this likely went down. And I had tears in my eyes because he was with them for over an hour. This wasn't some quick murder, leave them for dead, run. He was with them for much longer than I think any of us originally anticipated. So if you were looking for a very good animated timeline, shown kind of like on an overhead type of like Google Maps type of thing, like it just zoomed in, it shows the dots moving and animated, people coming and going, how they crossed paths, where the girls were taken down the hill and so forth. I highly recommend you watch it. It's called Delphi, Richard Allen Animated Probable Cause by Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. It brought me to tears. It's heartbreaking to see it animated. We know the timeline, we know what happened, but to see them represented for some reason as dots and see the time, go from like 1:30, 1:45 to 2:15, 2:30. And it really hits you how long he had with them alone and how far he had to walk, where everything happened. And it just puts a lot into perspective, and it's really sad. So now that we are here, guys, this is probably going to be the last Delphi update for a while. There's likely not going to be a lot more information publicly released until we get closer to the trial. There's probably going to be the dance of going to trial and appeals and motions and stuff like that. But I probably, unless something really, really huge happens, I'm probably going to be shelving this one for a while until we get closer to the trial. I will be covering the Moscow, Idaho murders. That one has kept me up at night. I don't know about you, but there's always that case that just really, really, really hits home. Staying up all night, researching this. And this case has legitimately freaked me out. In a previous episode, I told you guys about how I was up working on the podcast and a man tried to break into my house, and my parents actually alerted me, and he was standing right outside the window trying to break in. That's my worst nightmare. People are afraid of spiders, snakes, whatever. I'm not afraid of really... Other than snakes, I'm terrified. I will burn down my house if I see a snake. However, the one thing in this world that I'm really terrified of is a break-in. Someone coming in my house in the middle of the night, I'm not prepared. The Moscow, Idaho case absolutely terrifies me because I don't think that it was... I feel like a lot of people want to point the blame and fingers at early 20-somethings, at college students. I don't believe personally, I could be proven entirely wrong because after all, it's speculation. I don't feel like this was like a 21-year-old kid who a spurned lover, ex-boyfriend, whatever, who came in and murdered 4 people. I do feel like this was random. I do feel like, potentially a serial killer, several FBI profilers have actually said. That prospect is absolutely terrifying to me, based on my own experience, as well as just the crime rate here where I currently live. Not necessarily in my neighborhood or suburb, but the city as a whole. It's why I have like over $1,000 worth of security cameras and lock my doors and my bedroom doors every single night. But that being said, I will be getting back to you guys with the Dark Side of Disney series in part 2. I just really wanted to cover the Richard Allen affidavit because it's kind of like a little nugget of information that we've been waiting for, me in particular, for 5 years. And I find it just really fascinating that the affidavit centers around witness testimony a bullet. And then we also found out that his wife's like, yeah, he still has that Carhartt jacket. Like, WTF. But there'll be more, guys. Definitely going to be keeping track of everything. And yes, part 2 of The Darkness of Disney is in fact coming. Once again, you've been listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin. Thank you so much again for listening. If you dig the episode, please take 2 seconds out of your day. Leave that 5-star review on iTunes. Otherwise, follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, soon to be TikTok as well, where I'll be doing mini-sodes of these episodes where you can watch them in video form with corresponding images. But there's only so much time in a day, right? But I hope all of you guys are having an okay holiday season so far. It seems like everyone is getting that holiday spirit. And I don't mean a good one. I mean that everyone's getting raggedy and angry and frustrated. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. But I hope everyone is hanging in. And I will see you shortly with part 2 of The Dark Side of Disney. Until next crime.